are bright and shiny in my mind. You got me loving, hating, crazy indecision in my mind.
Welcome to the Fall Podcast, where the focus is on deer hunting, tips, tricks, tactics, and stories from across the Midwest. And now, here is your host, Aaron Blasey.
Welcome to the Fall Podcast. I am your host, Aaron Blasey, and this is episode number 22. On today's podcast, I have the guys from the Bowhunter Chronicles Podcast on, and we go into basically just a big BS session about a lot of different topics. It's a little bit longer podcast, but it kind of got away from us a little bit there. We got into some good conversation, and we talk a lot about Michigan and antler point restrictions and what, Michigan as a state could be doing a little different to manage our herd a little better. And we also talk about, deer camps in Michigan, the tradition, state land hunting, you name it, and we cover it basically. So it was just a big kind of a BS session, but it was also, just really cool to sit down and talk hunting and talk outdoors. And like I said, it's a little longer, but when you're having good conversation, time flies when you're having fun kind of thing, and it went a little long. So I hope you guys enjoy this one, and without further ado, I'm going to get Adam and John on here, and we're going to kick this thing off. All right, Adam and John, how you guys doing?
It's good. We got a big moon and a cold front coming in, and I got Thursday off, so I'm planning my strategies.
That's perfect, man.
Yeah. We ended up doing a podcast last night and then hung out till 1, and so I missed my alarm clock. I couldn't get up this morning to go hunt. So I'm like, it was the best morning too. I'm like, damn it, Adam.
Yeah, I woke up this morning and it was about 6:15, and I looked out on my back deck and there was like an inch of frost on the ground, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to go to work. So
yeah, that'll get in the way.
Yep. Well, for everybody who's, doesn't know who I'm talking to, can you guys, just kind of introduce yourselves and what you guys do?
Well, we run the Bowhunter Chronicles Podcast. We're just a couple regular guys that really like bow hunting. We're not, exceptionally good at it, I would say, but we're definitely passionate. John's more of the bow tech side, not the brand.
Not the brand. No, I do all the bow building and string building and all the tuning for Adam when he buys a bow that's screwed up, or
we get a bow that has incorrect things on it from the factory, and it takes us 7 years to figure it out. but yeah, so John has always been this mechanical guy, and he has all the, I guess he's the guy that I would always go to pick his brain and say, I guess the reason the podcast got started is we listened to podcasts, and a lot of my friends, people that didn't hunt or that wanted to get into hunting were always asking me, and I was more of like a gear guy, so I would buy like every little doodad and whatnot, and I do a lot of reading and stuff like that, so I was always like up on all of the latest kind of gear and the things that were coming out. And then John was the one that was taking the stuff, and he was, doing the FOC on all of his arrows and running 6 fletch and changing things up and changing his bow constantly. So we would have conversations for hours, and it was like, I've been thinking about doing a podcast, and John's like, I think I could do that too. So it just kind of morphed into this, and we're just people, kind of taking people along with our story, as far as continuing to learn in kind of like a do-it-yourself type manner. We started this thing as whitetail hunters, and ended up with opportunity to head out west and do some elk hunting this year, and then it quickly became a learn how to elk hunt from an eastern or flatlander perspective podcast very quickly.
That's pretty cool. You're talking about the bow hunting, or the setting up bows and everything, and I actually just got a brand new PSE Evoke 31, and I was at the shop today in Bay Archery over here on the east side of the state, and I know those guys pretty well, and they treat me pretty well because just like you guys, I mean, anybody else out there is pretty serious bow hunter. Not anybody can just touch my bow. And so I kind of hand select them, and I've actually got a guy that does pretty well, and I really like taking my stuff over there. But anyway, I got a brand new dozen arrows this summer and started shooting them. They were shooting great and everything. Well, I switched bows and figured that, you know, the spine would be just fine. Never really thought anything of it. Well, I'm paper tuning it today, and I had a low left tear. I mean, it was terrible, moving the rest all over and trying to figure everything out. And I was shooting a 300 spine and 70-pound bow, but I backed it off to 67. And I picked up a 340 spine and shot it, and it was a bullet hole. And I'm like, okay, so it's not, I thought it was like something in my grip or something I was doing, and shot the 300 again, low left, shot the 340, bullet hole. So like I ended up spending more money today buying brand new arrows, and now I'm shooting darts, so I'm happy with that.
Right. Yeah. So you were shooting the spine was too stiff for you.
Yeah. And I figured, you know, my bows are the bow that I have a PSE Carbon Air Evolve Cam, and then I just got the Evoke 31, and I figured it'd be pretty close to where I didn't think it'd be that big of a difference, but I learned something today.
Right. So you were right on the edge, basically on the on the spine chart. Basically, I ended up doing the same thing. Last year, I was shooting the Hoyt Double XL, which's got the DFX cams,
yep.
And then I picked up the RX1, and I was like, well, I'm right on the edge. Like on my arrows are like 29 inches, and I was shooting 75 grains brass up front, and then I switched over to 50 grains.
Okay.
Well, the 50 grains didn't break the shaft down enough, but I went with a 260 spine. And so I was like, man, I was getting the same thing, left tear, couldn't get rid of it. So it was either buy another set of arrows or buy a set of limbs. So I was like, well, I'll just put a set of 80-pound limbs on it. So, so that got rid of the tear.
You went aggressive on it. That's pretty aggressive.
Yeah. But it shoots great now.
Yeah. You know, and that's something I'm trying to get into a little bit. But, you know, we talked about, you know, off a record about how I've just got so much going on, and it's just something else into the fire that I just can't get into right now because I just don't have the time. You know, I'm trying to find time to mow my lawn, and I can't even do that. So, but that's something I've been wanting to learn, you know, that trade for sure.
Yeah, it definitely takes some time. You know, I learned a lot, you know, watching all of John Dudley's videos, and our listeners are probably sick of hearing me say it, but you know, he's got awesome information, and it's, you know, it's right out there for everyone to find.
Yeah, he's an animal, man. That guy, he knows everything, I swear. I listen to a lot of his stuff too, and he's just, it's unreal what he can do with a bow and how he can even shoot a bow, you know.
Right. Yeah, he's a great guy too. I mean, we met him at ATA, and you know, just like we're talking right now, we sat and talked probably close to 2 hours over the weekend.
Oh, really?
Just running into each other. Yeah.
That's cool.
Talking about building bows and talking sights and bowstring material. I mean, you name it, we talked about it.
Yep. So you guys, you know, kind of gave a brief about, you know, how you got into the podcasting and everything. Just for everybody listening, can you tell everybody, you know, my listeners that may have not, you know, heard your guys' podcast, where you guys are located at in Michigan and everything, and just kind of break that down?
Yeah, well, we're Twin Lake, Michigan. We're right on the west side of the state. Well, the big town that we're in is Muskegon, so we're in the county of Muskegon. And Bowhunter Chronicles.
Yeah, I mean, that's where we're at. So there's a lot of, like, the Manistee National Forest is like the big blocks of land around us. It's not up north, and I feel like the guys on, the east side of the state, everybody kind of goes up to the Pigeon River area, and around here, everybody goes somewhere in the Manistee National Forest. Those are like, I guess, the trends that I've kind of noticed.
Yep.
Yeah, the Manistee National Forest. I mean, that stretches, from half mile north of my house, or our house right here, in Twin Lake, all the way up to Manistee County, and even north of that. So there's a ton of public land, but there's a ton of public hunters too.
Now, is that where you guys are doing the majority of your hunting, is on that public land, or do you guys have private land that you hunt as well?
I hunt just the public land. I have no private land access. So
yeah. So right now I haven't hunted any private land at all this year. I'm leaving the first week in November. We've got a cabin with 240 acres up in the UP, and it's the southwest. We're 8 miles from Wisconsin.
Oh, okay.
And actually, like right now here in Michigan, we're in Muskegon here, we're in the CWD management zone.
Yep.
And the CWD, core area is just, in the counties adjacent to Muskegon there. So they just found a case in the UP, which puts our property in the CWD management zone. And it actually looks like we're like about maybe 4 miles, probably not even that far from actually the core area there as well.
Oh, man.
Like looking at the map. So it's kind of interesting, but we've got a cabin with 240 acres up there. That's it used to be cedar swamp, and it's been logged off a couple times. So it's like kind of overgrown. It's in that like reforming period. So there's a lot of nasty tangles and all sorts of that stuff. But it's a 7-hour drive from here in good weather. So we don't get up there a whole lot. So
Right.
I'm going to go up there for a week, first week in November.
That's cool. Did you say you had private land or public land up there?
It's private.
Oh, okay.
We've got 240 acres.
Yep. Okay.
My great-grandpa got a farmhouse and 40 acres for a $50 bad check during the Depression. And then some big tycoon from South Carolina got the 200 that was around us. And then forever and a day, we were the legal overseers of the land.
Yep.
And it's funny, when I was thinking about this, and having this conversation, I think at that time, when we were the legal overseers of the land, it was better hunting because it hadn't been logged off yet. And it definitely came back after it was logged, like 1 or 2 years after it was logged off. It was really good. But then after after my family bought that land, so the guy in North Carolina or South Carolina, he died. His kids logged off the land and then sold us the remnants. They took the timber and then sold us what was left.
the 200 acres.
Yep. But then it was ours. So then what happened was 1 million box blinds started going up on it and ladder stands everywhere, where before it wasn't our land, so we just had access to hunt there.
Okay.
And these people never set foot on there. So in thinking about it, it's 240 acres. It seems like a big piece of property, but there's more guys on that 240 acres than there is on any of the pieces of public that I've been to. I walk on a piece of public and I see 2 or 3 tree stands and I think, oh man, somebody's been here. But when I go on my property, I got to walk past 5 box blinds and 2 tree stands to get to wherever I want. So the deer are somewhat educated up there, I'd say.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about because the family farm that I grew up hunting here, I've got 2 farms here, but I've only hunted one. This is the 3rd year that I've hunted it because my brother-in-law had bought it. He has a dairy farm here, but the family farm is 215 acres. My dad has hunted it since, we were trying to figure this out the other day. He's been hunting it since the late 70s, and him and his best friend, and now my uncle's a part of it, their buddies, and then all of us kids and everything. And we have 215 acres, and there's 11 guys that hunt it. And it's like, we've got the most, what was it? I think we've got in that square mile, we've got the biggest continuous block of timber, I think. I can't remember how that worked, but it's we have a 65-acre hayfield, which the deer flock to. I mean, that's kind of our saving grace, but in one breath, but another one is like you'll go out there and you'll see 100 does in the hayfield every night. So it's like we just have tons of deer. The deer density up here is just unbelievable, but we do pull, a couple of good bucks out a year. We'll kill, 120-inch deer a year. What was it? 2016, we killed two. I killed one that was 120, and then we killed one with a rifle that was like 118. So that was kind of like our best year for our biggest deer, but we're striving for that 3.5-year-old. That's right around that, scoring range. So it's gotten a lot better in the last 10 years. I mean, 10 years ago, we were having guys shooting 1.5-year-old 8 points on opening day rifle season. And it's like, but everything progresses. I mean, you guys see it too. It just takes time, and our younger generation, we want to kill bigger deer now. And kind of the older generation, they're still on that, like, they're just happy to be out there hunting and they just want to kill their buck, which is totally fine, because I want everybody to have fun. And we built a deer camp. We built a log cabin from scratch up there in 2001, I believe. So we've got a nice deer camp there and everything, and it's really cool. But I totally understand what you mean by the, so many guys hunting not a very big piece of ground.
So it's hard for me to be on this end of the podcast, so I got to ask you a question. So what you said about that, the older generation and the just got to get a buck guy. So you hunt all over, with your job and kind of everything that you're doing. What is your take on the way that Michigan is managing their, with the 2 buck tags and the antler point restrictions and everything? I guess what's your take on that?
In my opinion, and until someone tells me differently, I feel like our DNR and the state of Michigan has no idea what our deer herd is. I feel like they say they do, but they have no idea, because the way I see it is they're going off of tags sold, and they're not really going off what I think they should be going off, which is harvest. Now, don't get me wrong. Not every hunter in the state of Michigan is going to register a deer. I get that. And you're going to get poachers. You're going to get, car accidents and stuff like that with deer. I totally get it. But in my opinion, from all the states that I've hunted, Missouri does it the best way. And it would take time, and yes, it would take a little bit of money, but with as many tags as we sell every year, I feel like they could, figure out a new process. So Missouri, every deer that you kill, you have to register that deer. And the way I do it, they just come up with a new app, and literally you can do it all on the app, and it takes 5 minutes. You go in there and you say what the deer was, and it asks you if it says, there's a whole bunch of lists of questions. I can't remember what they all were, but I think it even asks you possibly what the age of it is. I can't remember, and at the end it says, do you want to punch your tag? And it says submit, and you submit it, and now that is submitted to the state of Missouri. So they know that deer is killed. Now, like I said, you're never going to get 100% of all deer. You're not going to, if there was 100 deer killed in Michigan, you would never know there was 100 deer. It's just hard, but I just feel like the numbers are so skewed and how many are killed, because have you guys ever registered a deer in your life?
Not here in Michigan.
And that's what I'm saying. I've never done one. Everybody that I know in Michigan has never, ever registered a deer because it's not mandatory. Now, I feel like maybe because we've never done it, I think it might be kind of a hard transition, but I feel like we need to start getting towards that, because first and foremost, every time I turn around, I hear DNR or the state of Michigan or what it is trying to say that our deer herd's in either great health or we got it in check. And in my opinion, I'm like, I think you're full of crap, because you're going off of 1 million tags sold, and that's not how many deer are getting killed. You could probably, I don't know, you might be able to get it to 80%, but I feel I don't know what it is. That's just my opinion. And I think you kind of maybe start there and see what happens. Now this whole CWD thing, coming up, and I'm sure you guys heard the Ted Nugent on when he was talking to Joe Rogan about it, and he's like, it's a crock of crap. Like it's not even a thing, and it's like, well, I get that, but it's something, and what is it? I don't want it to get to a point where we lose our privileges to hunt or they eradicate our deer herd. You know what I mean? I don't know. I hope that kind of answered your question, but
Yeah, I think we have the same outlook on it, kind of like when we hunted Ohio, and we actually brought this up before. It was like we got down to Ohio, we buy our tag, and you get one buck, and so everyone's pretty much like, well, I'm only going to shoot one buck. I'm going to make it a good one, and there's a lot of good bucks running around down there. But once we shot our buck, and then you call in, they ask you, like what county, what kind of weapon, go through this whole checklist, and then same thing, you register it basically. I mean, and same thing, guys can, fudge the numbers on that or not call in, but for the most part, it's a good system.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they have a really good, healthy deer population, a lot of nice bucks, and you get up here in Michigan and,
But on top of that, I guess the way that I see it is I see that there's like a few different classes of hunters.
yes,
Right.
yep.
And I think that's what I was getting at with that question is, so for older generation, and I think it is generational, there's I got to shoot my buck guy. And it doesn't matter if it has 3 points or 13.
right.
I got my buck. That's a successful season. Now, I think that probably lends more towards the rifle hunter.
Yeah.
Than the bow hunter. I think your bow hunters, well, now with the advent of crossbows is a whole nother, ball of wax. But I think that there's those guys that their season is successful if they shoot a buck. It doesn't matter to the buck. And then I see in that same class, I would put your youth or, your young kids, first-time hunters, that sort of thing, where they're just happy to get out there and harvest a deer. And I think that's maybe one way that the antler point restrictions and the youth hunt are kind of doing a disservice, is these kids are going out early with the summer pattern deer. They're getting a first crack at all of these big bucks. They don't have to, in my mind, they're not working as hard, to shoot their first buck, or they're seeing, much larger class deer. They're harvesting them, from the first time, and then they don't get that bug because they don't want to. It wasn't.
I was like,
easy. It wasn't a build up.
Right.
But yeah, I would put that. I would put the first time hunters in that category, and then you've got the meat hunters who are just doesn't matter, buck, doe, fawn, button buck. They're gonna eat it, and that's their sole goal going out there. And then you've got the stone cold killers that are out there, and I feel like that's where the Michigan's 2-buck system is kind of hindering any of that big antler growth. I mean, because we've got good genetics, especially in southern Michigan. There's some huge deer down there.
Yeah, definitely.
But you've got these guys that are shooting maybe a deer that if you only had one tag, they would let walk.
Right.
But it's there. It meets the antler point restriction. It's a decent buck. They shoot it, and then they go out, and then maybe the last day of the season they shoot another one just like it because they didn't shoot that bigger one.
Yep.
But if you're out there with one tag and that's it, and then it's, like Ohio, where we were at, you could shoot 3 does in this county, 4 does in this county, 3 does in this county, so meat wasn't an issue. There were bigger bucks, it seemed like, everywhere. So you were, a 100-inch 8-point, you didn't even pick up your bow.
Right.
That wasn't the thing. So I think that's kind of like the way that I look at Michigan and kind of like where things are kind of going astray.
You know, and you brought up the youth hunt too. And this is something that's been kind of something that I've been thinking a lot about as well. And, you know, when I was going through the youth hunt, because I could have hunted the youth hunt, but my dad wouldn't let me. He's like, he didn't believe in the youth hunt. He didn't think it was, the right thing to do to let your kid go out in the summer, like you said, in the feeding patterns and kill possibly the biggest deer of your, life, or whatever. And then he didn't think that, that was going to get me into hunting, but, more than what it already had. So maybe he passed that down a little bit to me because I don't believe in the youth hunt and when it lands. Okay, it's not that he doesn't believe in the youth hunt. It's not that, it was the time that it happens, and it's still to this day. In my opinion, I feel like, and I'm going to go back to the Missouri thing. Missouri's youth hunt lands in, like, I want to say it's like the first, or I think it might be the second week of November. But what I'm thinking is, like, why not put it the weekend of Thanksgiving? A lot of the kids they're off school. They're I know, I get it. It's kind of getting cold, and you don't want to get your kid out in the cold. I understand that, but like, it's I don't know. I just don't think it's getting more kids into the woods, I guess. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but the reason where it's coming from is I went to school with some kids that did the youth hunt, and this one girl went out and shot a 165-inch deer, her first deer ever. Never hunted again in her life. Like, just shot this giant deer, and it's not just her, but it was like a couple other kids that, just, they did it because their dad wanted them to do it, and then they go out and shoot this giant deer, or it doesn't even matter if it's a giant deer, it's just a deer. So I feel like that doesn't land on the right time. In the antler point restrictions, I don't know really what I think about it, and it might not, I don't know, because I've been trying to focus on killing a higher age class deer for the last couple of years, so it really doesn't apply to me, I guess. I haven't really had a lot of opportunities where I had to pass up a 100-inch deer in Michigan, you know what I mean? So that had 4 on one side or something. I really don't know what I think about that, but the $1 buck rule, I'm all for it. $1, and that's what you get, because I'm all for that. And even if you want to jack the prices up on it, instead of paying, maybe you're paying the same as you did for a combo, but only for one tag, I'm totally fine with that if it's a money thing. And then I don't know. But I totally agree with you with the classes. You know what I mean? You hit the nail right on the head with the hunters and the rifle hunters and everything, and the meat hunters. And I don't know. I guess I just feel like there's a lot that can be done and hasn't happened yet, and I know it's not going to happen overnight, but I just feel like there's some practices that the state of Michigan can be taking and to gradually maybe do it over time, and it just hasn't happened that I've seen,
And so, like, just kind of on the antler point restriction note, one of the things you had, texted me before this was like kind of how, like, I grew up hunting, or like what our style is, or whatever. Yeah. So my dad bow hunted for forever. I mean, his bow is like one of these 4-wheeled herders relics. I mean, that was out of the back page of the hunting magazine right when it first came out. And I can remember in my lifetime, maybe before I started seriously getting into bow hunting, him bringing home 2 or 3 deer with a bow, and they were always does. I don't remember any bucks, but that was never the goal. It was just to shoot deer. Yep. And at the time, back in the late 80s, early 90s, we were in Menominee County, and I think it was unit 055, and it had the highest deer population in the state. So there was doe permits. You could buy as many as you wanted. And so we hunted deer, and I went and I was a stump sitter, and with a rifle. I mean, I shot 2 deer the first day that I rifle hunted. I bow hunted, the first 2 years before that, and I missed one right at the base of my tree, and I missed one at 15 yards the first time I ever bow hunted. But the first day that I rifle hunted, I shot 2 deer just because it was fish in a barrel.
Right.
And so that was what made a successful hunt. You know, you went up to hunting camp, you were up there with the guys, and that year, so that was when I was 14, so that would have been 1995. Our camp imposed our own antler point restrictions, so it was 3 on one side for all the camps that were around us, because we weren't seeing the class of deer that, you know, everybody has their stories of the UP or back in the day,
Right.
or whatever.
Yep.
It always used to be better. I think what happened was there's a lot more guys that got onto the land, and all the does were there. And every year they would shoot maybe one deer that was a good buck. But, I mean, and that's 110, 115-inch buck, like not a giant by any means. But that antler point restriction up there, I mean, we saw little bucks. You couldn't. There was a couple years in recent history where it was like you couldn't shoot a doe. It was just everything had horns. Everything was a spike, or, you know, because I guess they knew that they were safe there, and so shooting does was just the way that it was, and that's kind of what's changed with me as far as my hunting. And I listened, you know, like you had said, you know, you're targeting this class of deer or this. You know, that was never like the way that we were brought up hunting. Like the way that I was brought up hunting was, you know, you bought your doe permit along with your buck tags, and if a buck came out and it had 3 points on one side, you shot it. And I was like ostracized one opening day for not shooting a little gnarly racked 7-point, because I had 2 spikes chasing the doe right past me, and then the next deer was like a 2.5-year-old just mutant, and I could have spit on him, and they're like, why didn't you shoot him? I'm like, well, that wasn't what I was after. You
Right.
know, I can shoot a doe. I could have shot the doe.
Yep.
You know, the progression was that bigger bucks kept coming. I wanted to see what was behind him.
Exactly.
Because he wasn't a trophy
Yeah.
to me. But like I say, we had that for like the last 20 years, and it doesn't really seem to have changed. But our hunting style, you know, evolved into, well, it's really cold, and here's a box blind, or here's a heater, or here's something else. And, you know,
So the mature bucks are like, yeah, we're going to stay away from that.
and they, you know, it was always in the rut that they were, you know, it was bucks that were either searching or chasing does, and that's when they were there. Up until recent history, when, you know, I guess I've kind of ventured out and, you know, started looking at the piece of property instead of just sitting where traditionally there's been deer. Have we been seeing more and more like larger bucks up there? But I say that with the antler point restrictions now up where John and my father-in-law hunt, that was one of the first counties to have antler point restrictions, you know, in Lake County. And I think it's been great as far as the quality of deer that are coming out of there. There's always been big deer up there, but now there's
Right.
more.
There's more bigger bucks and getting killed. There used to be a sign on one of the gates up there, and it said mandatory QDM sucks. And I think that sign was up there until like last year. I think they finally took it down. They're like, oh wow, it doesn't suck. I mean, because now we're seeing bigger bucks. But I grew up hunting. I was on the other side of it. My dad was like, he was a bow hunting machine. I mean, just a killing machine in general. It didn't matter gun or bow. But I've never put in for. This was the first year I put in for a doe permit.
Really?
Yep. When I was growing up, I wasn't allowed to shoot a doe. But if it had horns, shoot it.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember, I mean, my dad had literally cardboard boxes in our basement with just racks, just hundreds of them. And, you know, it was like, don't shoot a doe. Matter of fact, when I finally shot my first doe, I was, you know, I think I was 15. No, I was 16 because I was driving. And I was up north, and I ended up shooting a nice doe and come back, and my dad was pissed. What'd you shoot a doe for? I'm like, because it's good for the population, Dad, and they're good to eat, you know. I'd rather shoot a doe than a little spike horn or a 3-point, you know, shoot a nice mature doe. And so, and there was a lot of years where I didn't kill anything just because I wanted, I killed some really nice bucks with my gun when I was younger, and it was like, you know what? I ended up, I think when I was 17 or 18, that was the last year I killed a nice 10-point with my gun. And I'm like, you know what? I love hunting. I'm just going to hunt them with my bow.
Yep.
It was, for me, it was like, not to say, it was just easy. Two of them I killed just dumb luck. I just walked out and sat down, and they end up running by me, and it was like one shot. Those 3 bucks I shot with, 3 shells. That was it. But
yeah, and so, you talk about your dad. My dad was the same way. My dad was and that's where I get how much I love bow hunting from. Is my dad is just, he doesn't bow hunt as much anymore. He's very busy, but he tries to get out a little bit. But when I was growing up, I mean, that's all he did was bow hunted. And with the APRs and how I say I don't really know about them, it's not that I don't like them. We do have a self-imposed antler point restriction on our deer camp on our family farm, and we've had it for 20 years now. It's either 4 on one side or 8 or bigger. That's the rule. And you can only shoot any buck when it's your first buck. So once you kill that buck, it could be a spike, it could be a button buck, whatever you wanted. Then you have to abide by the rules. And I think that's maybe why I don't really think about the point restrictions, is because I always knew it in the back of my head, it was there. I only could shoot an 8-point, or I could only shoot a 4-point on one side kind of deer. And I'm all for them because I see what they're doing. I have a buddy that hunts up in, I can't remember what county now, up in the northern Lower Peninsula, and in 3 years they were getting bucks that were in the 140 to 150 once they put the antler point restriction on. And I'm like, well, it's working. Why doesn't the whole state go to it? But like growing up, for me, the day that it hit me, I can remember it like it's yesterday. I was 14 years old, and my uncle had shot a double split browed 10-point on opening day rifle season that scored like 130. And it was like, that was the biggest deer we'd taken off the farm. And it was like, wow, this is a mega giant, when I was 14 years old. And from that day forward, because I was the first kid to come up, so it was my dad, my 2 uncles, and me, basically my dad's best friend, that bow hunted. That's it, on 200 acres. And I know that seems like a lot, but it really wasn't back then. It didn't seem like. So I'm like, these deer are really here, So since then, I really started to try to, I wanted to kill the big one. I wanted to kill something worth bringing home. And so that's, I don't know, you could call it, maybe I was spoiled, or, but then my dad 2 years in a row killed bucks in the upper 120s, with his bow and with his gun. And it's like, man, I want my opportunity. Well, in 2009, I killed my first, what I called at that time, really good Michigan deer. And it was a 100-inch 8-pointer and on film. And that was like unbelievable. I was so happy, The next year I did the same thing, same kind of deer. And then from there it was like, okay, I've killed these like 2.5-year-old deer. Now I want to start trying to kill a 3.5-year-old deer. And it's not that I didn't kill does. We kill a lot of does. I'm all for killing does because, like you said, John, it does the herd good. I mean, I don't like seeing 100 does in our hayfield at night because they just kick all the bucks out of there and eat all the food that the bucks can't. So we don't have as many bucks. You know what I mean?
Right.
But that's kind of, I don't claim to be any big buck hunter, but if I don't get my buck this year, I'm totally fine with it. I'm going to kill some does for meat and everything, but I'm just trying to pinpoint, I think it's really cool to find a deer and try to kill that specific deer, or couple deer, in which I had an opportunity to last weekend, and I blew that opportunity. But that's kind of where I'm at with it. It's, I do feel like Michigan is making some strides in the right direction, but I just don't think I just don't think they're doing everything that they can be.
For sure.
So you said, the first good Michigan deer that you killed on film. Now, was that, I guess, how long had you been filming? So we're starting to try and film hunts, and John's taking cameras out, with him. I haven't taken a camera out this year just yet because I've been everywhere, and it's just been exploring. And I would have been using my camera arm as a paddle this last Saturday, but so I'm trying to get a little bit better idea of like where I'm going before I lug all the extra stuff with me. But so how long have you been filming your hunts, and did that like kind of what spurned the passion into what you're doing now, or I mean, how did that all come about?
So when I was 16 years old, I, just like everybody, even probably you guys too, I mean, I grew up watching all the hunt shows, on ESPN on Saturday mornings, watching Realtree and everything. That was my thing. It wasn't cartoons, it was hunting. And I've always wanted to either be a professional baseball player or I wanted to do something hunting related for a living. And when I was 16, my best friend at the time, I was like, hey, would you, we should try filming a hunt. I didn't know how to hang a tree arm. I didn't know much about tree arms. I didn't even know how to hang a second stand in the tree, like where do you put it and stuff like that. So I borrowed my dad's best friend's video camera, and it was like a high 8 VHS kind of deal, and he was going to film me the first night, and I was going to film him the second night. So we went out and hunting over bait, because that's what we did. We hunted over bait, and I went to a spot. I remember him asking my best friend Brandon, he said, what's the odds of us being able to see deer tonight or getting an opportunity to kill one? And I said, I think it's pretty good, because I'm going to kill a doe if one comes in. He's like, all right, So we went out, and I remember it was October 16th, and went out. I could even tell you the tree we were in, and hung the stands right then. Like before it was a run and gun, before I even knew what a run and gun was, but I knew that was an area what I wanted to be. Hung the stands right then and didn't even know what we were doing filming, just trying to film it all. And about 45 minutes later, 3 big does came in, and I shot one on film. And I was a sophomore in high school, and I had a video productions class in high school. And the teacher was one of my football coaches. And I went in there and I said, this is what I did this weekend, and he's like, really? He's like, why don't you edit it up and we'll put it on the announcements for lunch, so like at homeroom, so all the whole school can see it. And I'm like, no way, like we can do that? And he's like, yeah, let's do it. So I spent the next couple of days editing this hunt, and I remember I put it to a 3 Doors Down song, and like not knowing, what to do, but I'm like, I love this song, so I want to do that, and put it to that song, and the whole school watched it, and it was like that they seen something that was only done on TV, so it was like so cool. And ever since then, I wanted to do this, and I can tell you religiously from 16 on until it would have been 2013. So it would have been, I was 16 years old. Boy, that was a while ago. I can't remember. That was 16 years ago. And I filmed every hunt, whether I had someone with me or if I just filmed it myself. And I killed a lot of deer on film by myself. And 2000, I had 2 really rough years as a hunter. It was 2010 and 11. I just wasn't capitalizing on opportunities, and you go through those hiccups and everything as a hunter. But 2012, I targeted a deer that was a 3-year-old deer, and that was when it really started hitting me like I wanted to kill some bigger deer. And I went and bought a decoy at Jay's up in Clare. I went out hunting that night, filming myself, and I had this deer that I was trying to kill come into the decoy and postured up to him, and I killed him at like 4 steps. And I filmed him falling too on camera, and it was like, so, and that was right when I started working for Rusted Rooster and the Kiefer Brothers, where I'm at now. And so yeah, I mean, I've filmed basically since I was 16 till now, and present time. There was times I'd go out without a camera just because I wanted to go out and enjoy it again. It kind of got to the point when I was filming myself, it was just like getting to be work. And I'm like, well, I'm not really having fun with it anymore. I'm just going to leave the camera. But then something happened that I was like, well, I wish I had it on camera, So it just got to be a point where I just did it and I just sucked it up and, and that's the rest is history kind of deal, and it's a lot of fun. And I eventually got to the point where I told myself, and this is kind of where my podcast comes from is, my kids, I have one kid now, and I said, eventually, I want these memories on there for my kids or my grandkids to be able to say, oh, this is what Grandpa was like, and be able to listen to these podcasts or go back and look at the old tapes and everything and the footage and, be able to, see me and my element and what I love to do kind of thing. So that's kind of where it stemmed from.
So for the new guys that are trying to get into filming, I mean, I guess for our listeners, kind of give a little bit of background on what it is that you do for a living. You kind of alluded to it there. And then what would you recommend for guys that are starting out, filming? Because, everything seems now to be DSLR and all this, when I've yet to take my DSLR with me just because I cringe at like getting it wet or dropping it or something like that. It doesn't seem very durable versus that. But yeah, anyways, could you get into that a little bit for us?
Yeah. So, like I said, my freshman year, I went to Muskegon Community College, and knowing what I wanted to do, I kind of chased a baseball dream, and I went over there and played baseball for 1 year. But they didn't have the program that I really wanted to do. I wanted to do the television and digital media productions. So after the first year of that, I transferred to Fair State, and they have a really, really good television and digital media productions program. And I finished out college there, and right away I was starting to look for internships. And it came, the places I wanted to go were, I wanted to go to Bone Collector with Michael Waddell, Buck Commander, or Chris and Casey Kiefer here in Midland, Michigan. And sent out my resumes and everything, and a guy by the name of Jason Brown called me, and he is a business partner with Chris and Casey, and he's the production guy. Like, he started his production company. He's from Beaverton, and he started Jack Pine Productions. Then he rebranded to Rack Focus, and now when Chris and Casey came on to be business partners with them, they formed Rusted Rooster Media. And he called me and said, "Oh, I want you to come in, and I saw your demo reel, and I really want to get you in here and meet the guys and everything, and get you as an intern." Well, I was supposed to do a 6-month internship, and they hired me after 2 months. And so now, that was 6 years ago. So I've traveled all over. I film Chris and Casey Kiefer. I film Casey all the time in whitetail season, and I've been all over. I've been to Italy pheasant hunting, New Zealand hunting. I've been to the Yukon, Alaska a couple times, Northwest Territories on a sheep and caribou hunt, Alaska on a grizzly hunt. I've been to a lot of places in just about every Midwest state hunting whitetails and turkeys. And just getting to document everything with them. And, sometimes I've been fortunate to go out and hunt, which, me being as passionate a hunter, wanting to get into this business, you love hunting, but when you get into it, you don't get to hunt much. You do, but you don't. You don't get to hunt in the times you want to hunt, really. I haven't hunted a rut since 2012. So I take that back. I got to hunt 1 morning in Missouri. 2 days, but I killed 1 morning in Missouri in 2015. A freak thing kind of happened, and I filmed Casey shooting a buck the night before, and we had 2 days for the gun opener in Missouri, and we didn't really have anything to do, and I had a tag, and he's like, "Well, why don't I film you, and you shoot my bow?" I'm like, "Okay." So we went out the next morning, and I rattled up a buck, and I shot it with his bow, and I killed one on camera, and he was filming me. So it was pretty cool how that happened. But I say I haven't hunted. I haven't pulled the trigger and been able to be the guy killing in the rut, but I've experienced every rut, in Iowa and Kansas, Missouri, so I'm still learning, and I still get to hone my craft as a hunter as well as a cameraman and field producer. But that's kind of the backstory of what I'm doing. I even still now I do a lot of farm management for Chris and Casey on their leases and everything, and film for our show called Rival Wild and Dropped, and I'm also the editor for Rival Wild. So everything you see with Rival, other than basically the graphics, I do everything but the graphics. And I have a guy who helps me with audio as well, Jason Freer. He does tremendous on that. And Lee Vandenbrink, he's Chris's field producer, and he does a tremendous job too. The kid's very talented, and so I've got a great group of guys around me, and we're a great team, and we get to put out some really cool content. But the second part of that question you asked me, for new guys getting into it and what to do, honestly, you were talking about a DSLR and everything, and for anybody that doesn't know what a DSLR is, it's basically a camera that looks like a picture camera that you take pictures with, but it also takes very good video. A lot of them do. For advice out there, if you're just looking to, do digital stuff and, still wanting to do good quality stuff, I really wouldn't go and break the bank in getting camera gear. I would really try to find your niche first and find out how to tell a story. You could get a $300 handy cam and still go out there and tell the best story there is and lay it down, and not a lot of people are gonna care about the quality. It's about the story and connecting with your audience and who you really want to connect with. Now, quality does matter, but a lot of guys that are trying to get in it are like, I don't want to spend $5,000 and stuff like that, because you also got to buy editing equipment, and you also got to buy all the stuff to produce it with. So I would definitely really try to figure out what kind of story you want to tell and use what you have. If you only have a couple GoPros, use them in the most creative way you can use them, and find out ways to do it how other people haven't yet. You can't really reinvent the in the tree type stuff. You know what I mean? That's kind of done the way it's done. But there's some things that I want to do with the guys that not anybody's really doing, and it's kind of with our setups and everything. But it's a lot of work, and we just really haven't got there yet. But it's coming. But other than that, for everybody out there, I just really would find your niche and find out the story that you're trying to tell, and go tell the best one possible, and then just keep building from there, really.
How do you not get discouraged? Because the animals, the game, they don't always follow your storyboard. Like, I can want to tell this story in one way, but if you're not seeing the deer that you're looking for, if they're not within range, if something, if the batteries die, how do you continue that story in those type of situations?
You mean throughout a season, or are you talking like in a particular hunt?
Well, just in general, like, how do you fight through? Because what I've found trying to film hunts is a couple of things. One, if you're doing self-filming and you're packing in a long ways and out and in and out and bouncing around, it gets really old really quick. It's easy to get burned out. And then after that, you've got all this footage, or all these, like, hey, it's sit number 327 and I've seen 0 deer today. You've got so much of that and so much B-roll to go through and everything like that. Your story gets muddled, whether it's through the season or through a hunt. And so that I guess, like mental fatigue? How do you fight through that? Or is it just that's your passion? So you're like, I've got it. This is the way that I'm putting it all together.
Yeah.
Maybe we should put some more time into scouting so we're not going 300 days without seeing a deer.
Yeah, maybe you should go somewhere else and hunt. No.
Let's go back to Ohio.
Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. And, it's difficult. There's a lot of times when it's Groundhog's Day, and I kind of revert back to the first year that I was with Chris and Casey. We hunted from the 25th of October till November 8th on one particular deer, and we ended up killing him. Casey and I killed him. He was a 175-inch deer in Illinois. And that hunt, we were seeing a lot of deer. We were seeing a lot of good bucks. I mean, we were passing up deer that we probably should have been, really rethinking. But he had a vision. He wanted this deer. Fast forward the next year, him and I hunted a deer, 183-inch 8-point in Illinois, and hunted him 18 days, and we got skunked where we never saw a deer. I think it was almost half of the sits in 18 days. Never saw a deer. Now, there was times we would drive to the property in the morning, and it was like a 45-minute drive, and it's just like Groundhog's Day. It's the same thing every day. I remember one morning it was later in the hunt. I want to say it was like day 15 or something like that. And we get there and we park in the truck, and we kind of got there early, and he looks at me and I look at him, and he's like, "So what do you want to do?" And I said, "Honestly, I want to fall asleep." And it's like, and it's just one of those things you kind of just have to, you just got to keep pushing. Now, it's tough because it's hard to stay on top of the ball because it's gonna happen when you least expect it, and if it does happen. But I guess to kind of stay in the groove and just like not get burnt out by it, I would say, there's a couple different things you could probably do, but maybe switch up a tactic, do something out of the ordinary. Maybe push, maybe I don't know how you're doing it, but maybe if one day you're going into hunt and you've been hunting this area where you're just kind of staying off, you're not getting aggressive, maybe one night throw everything out the window and go for broke and just lay down that, because it kind of gets you excited. It's like, I'm going to go in here, I'm either going to blow this deer out or I'm going to see him and he's going to be close, kind of thing. Just try some different things and try doing something that you would never do before. Go on a different wind. You never know. You might think this deer's bedded, or these deer are bedded in an area and maybe they're not bedding there and you're just going on a different whim, I would just say just try to spruce it up a little bit and just do something. Hunt from the ground. I don't know if you hunt from the ground at all. Just go in there and, set a ground blind up or hunt from behind a deadfall, But as far as the footage goes, the thing is there's times where we've gotten the stand and I won't have Casey do an interview because I get lazy. And it's like, God dang it. Like, I can't do that. You know what I mean? You got to stay on the ball because, last couple of years, we've had some rough years, him and I. And as far as just, getting, we've been able to get on deer, but it's just like one thing or another happens. Maybe the wind switches, or maybe they come on the wrong side of the tree or something. It's just like, God damn, like we're so close, but it's like we can't make it happen. And you want to pull your hair out, and you're hunting 60 plus days a year, morning and night, and you're tired and you want to go home, and it's just, but I would just say that's kind of what Casey and I do, just to kind of, because we both feel it. And it's like, we need a break. We need to do something different. Let's go to this stand. And then it happens. It's like the least, you least expect, and it just happens. That's what I would say, honestly. And, in filming, that would possibly change your storyline a little bit. Maybe you had, story A going, and you're like, oh, I'm going to go hunt on the ground for this deer tonight. And you have a different story now. Story B is you hunting on the ground, and I'm going to take this new approach. And your viewers are they will start to grasp onto that as well. You've been hunting from a tree stand or a saddle for the last 15 days. Now I'm going to hunt from a ground from the deadfall. And now it kind of starts building a little bit of drama, and, because not a lot of people hunt from the ground, and behind a deadfall, it's just stuff like that, I think.
Yeah, last year I filmed a lot, and one of the days we were up at the property in the UP, I was just over it, and I went back in and I got right on the edge of this field edge, kind of like butted up to our property line on the corner of the neighbor's field and the public, and now there's not a ton of deer up there, but you see deer consistently. I saw 30 deer. I had them come right underneath me. I had 2 bucks chasing does over right on the edge of the public. I had turkeys come down from roost right in front of me, and I didn't have the camera because I was done. It was just like unbelievable. I had a fawn bed down right in front of me, and it's just like you said, like makes you want to pull your hair out, because as soon as you don't bring it with you, that's when everything kind of happens that way.
Yeah.
So.
And we had, Casey and I had it last year too. We were hunting in Kansas, and we were going after a particular deer. He named him Arkansas Dave Rudabaugh. And this deer he was a big deer. I mean, he was maybe upper 60s, maybe possibly touch 170. And we hadn't seen a deer hardly. I mean, we were hurt to see does, but we knew we were in his area somewhere. And it was like a couple days have gone by, and it's like, so I never sit down when I'm filming. I never do, because it can happen so fast and I have to be on the ball. Well, I got caught with my pants around my ankles, and Casey decided, he's like, I want to rattle. So at this particular moment, I was actually standing up because I was filming him rattling and stuff and trying to get it live. I like to try to do everything live. I don't really like to do recreates if I don't have to. And so he rattles, and this deer comes busting into this timber. And I heard him before he did, because I've got headphones in, and my shotgun mic picks up everything. I hear so much before any hunter. You know what I mean? I'm like, there's times I'll sit there and I'm like, I hear deer walking, and he's like, where? And I'm like, I don't know yet, just because it just sounds like it's coming from your right, but you have headphones on, so it could be coming from your left. So it's like, but this deer comes busting in on my side of the tree, and I whip around and I see him, and I'm like, giant. I said, it's Arkansas Dave. And he's like, where? And I'm like, he's at like 20 yards. And he's walking from left to right, and he's going to come in a shooting lane for a shot at 15 yards for him. I mean, he's almost to the shooting lane. And this is kind of where I wasn't on top of things, and I wasn't on. It's the only time that I've ever busted a deer. And I tried to turn when I probably shouldn't have, and the deer caught me and bounded off. And I about tied my hunter safety system rope around my neck and jumped out of the tree, because I felt so bad, because I'm there to do a job, and I'm there to not act like another person in the tree. I'm there to act as one hunter. You know what I mean? We've got so much else, in the tree, and it's like, I felt terrible, like for days. Like I was going off on people, for no good reason, just because I was so upset at myself, because we've been working so hard to kill this deer, and we had the one opportunity that you get, and I blew it. And it's a tough pill to swallow. Casey, I mean, he's like, it's just like you dropped a pass on the 1 yard line. He's like, you just got to get up there and get into the next play. You know what I mean? I'm like, I understand, but that was to win the Super Bowl basically. And it's just like, so those kind of things, you just got to stay on the top of it, even though it's like you've been doing it every day and you think you're going to go into stands. It's like, we're never going to kill here. I've done it so many times, and then we kill a big one, and it's like, never expected that, so yeah, it's hard to do it, but I think it's kind of a mental thing, and I suffered from it too. Remember, I was telling you how it just became work for me to bring my camera in there, but then something like you just said, you had the best sit probably in a long time, seeing all these deer and turkeys. You didn't have the camera, and then you're like, damn it, I should have brought it, and so that's kind of, I think that's all in what you kind of want to do with it, and how far you want to push it, really.
Yeah, it's like this is my first year trying to film, and so I got a camera arm and camera and all the gear from Adam, and I'm like really got to commit to it. So like the last 3 hunts I've been lugging this shit around. And it's like last night, I walked 1.5 miles back into the swamp, and we've had a ton of rain over here, and so it was like just right up to the edge of the top of my boots, and I'm trudging around through it, and I'm like, finally, and it was a terrible night. Didn't see any deer. It was terrible. But I get home and like, man, I put it on the scale. I had all my gear strapped to my tree stand, and what was it, like 60?
60, just over 60
Holy
pounds.
crap.
Yeah, so I was like, son of a bitch. No wonder why I was freaking dying out there.
That is so much gear.
But, yeah, well, I had extra clothes and all my other, I was like, I just threw everything on the pack. So
Well, and another way too, and I don't know if you guys do any hunting with each other, but that's another way to kind of pass the time and make it fun too, is maybe say, hey, I'm going to go film you tonight, or, you come film me or something. You don't have to do it every night, but start doing it with a buddy, and, that's doing it with someone else and lugging all that stuff in back, 3 miles in the swamp. It makes it a little easier, a little more gratifying sometimes too.
yeah, we're probably going to do that Thursday if I can get away for the evening hunt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
you'd mentioned that you're standing up the whole time.
Yep.
And then you had also mentioned when you were doing the sits and switching it up, and you had mentioned tree stand or saddle. So I know from listening to some of your other podcasts, and especially the one with Greg Godfrey, that you started saddle hunting long ago because of influence of John Eberhardt, who's from your local town there. And then, so this year, did you get one of the tethered saddles?
It hasn't showed up yet. I think it's on its way, I believe. I know Greg's been really backed up with everything, and honestly, I told him that, I do want to get one for sure, but I said there's a lot of orders that need to be filled before me, so you need to take care of that first. And just because I have a lot of pre-hung stuff right now too, and I have some areas that I just hold off until the right time to go in there, so I didn't really want to screw with that. But if it was to come, I would be definitely going in to hunt a little bit with it this year. I did start hunting with a saddle. When was it? 2010 or 11. I hunted it for almost 3 years, like 2.5 years. The first year I hunted with it off and on. I would go from a hang-on to a saddle, and until John Eberhardt told me to, you just got to go all in with it, basically, and really try it. That's when I started doing it. The second year, I hunted exclusively with the saddle. And I'm not going to lie to you, I struggled out of it. I'm not saying it was bad, but I did struggle a little bit. Those were those years I had a rough couple years. I had trouble shooting out of it. And I really don't know what it was. I practiced out of it. Maybe I didn't practice enough. I was always missing deer high, and maybe I wasn't aiming low enough, or I don't know. It was really comfortable. Well, I had the trophy line tree saddle. It was comfortable for being the only one out there, basically, that I knew of. But now with the tethered mantis out there, it was, looking back at it, it was like you were wearing a big shield or something on you. It was cumbersome. It was hot. It was kind of comfortable, but 2 hours into the sit or so, my hips would hurt, but the benefits of it are astronomical. I could basically get into any tree I wanted, and now that I have the Wild Edge steps as well from Wild Edge, I can do whatever, go wherever I want, do whatever I want. And my biggest thing is, once I do get the tethered mantis, I'm going to just shoot the heck out of it. You know what I mean? I want to practice as much. And if I do get it this year, like I said, I probably will go in and hunt a couple sets with it, but I also want to get really good with it first. And for my wife, I did mention too on that podcast with Greg, my wife, she's kind of afraid of heights, and she likes to bow hunt a lot too. And I got her a saddle as well, and that took her fear of heights basically away when I thought it was going to do the opposite. But she really likes facing the tree, and she does really well out of it. She's killed a couple deer out of hers. She doesn't have it anymore. I got rid of both of them, but she really liked it, and she sits in hang-ons now, but
So how, when you're filming with that, obviously it's got to be a little bit more difficult, or it would seem to me anyway, if you got the tree in front of you instead of having, the camera right next to you.
Yeah.
Are you like filming around the tree or
or
in front of you?
When my wife and I filmed out of it, we didn't use a tree arm. I do know that guys do use tree arms. I think Mark Kenyon, is actually using a tree arm. He's got to be, because if he's filmed himself out of it, that might be a question for him. I've never filmed with a tree arm out of it. I rigged up something that it's basically a bungee strap, but it's kind of like it's a different material, and I would rig it up and it would stretch. And I rigged it up on the camera, a bottom mount and a top mount, and I'd put it basically how you would put like a sack around your neck and under your arm, and I would keep tension on that, and then I would film everywhere, you know what I mean? And you'd never miss anything that way. But if you do want to, self-film, you'd have to use a tree arm, though.
Right.
But filming that way freehand was simple. It was awesome because you never missed anything.
Yeah, the saddle hunting thing is really, really intriguing, and I really kicked myself because I had tried to get a hold of Greg just in the last couple of months to try and get him on the podcast, and I couldn't get a hold of him, and I was going when I went on Instagram to like message him. I found one from like February where he had reached out to us, and I was like, ugh. It was like one of those ones that either John had looked at it or something, because we're both on the Instagram, and it just got lost in the shuffle.
Yep.
And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Greg's like an awesome guy. I don't know if you've met him yet or not, or get a chance to talk to him yet. He's super nice. You should just reach out to him again. He'll get back to you, I almost bet. And I love having him on the podcast because he's like very upbeat and very like, he's just got an extra step in his talk, and he's really fun to have on the podcast.
Yeah, it's super intriguing, and I don't know, like talking to you about it is interesting because you did it with the older ones, and it's not. I guess I see, with social media you're inundated with things, and if you follow along, all the same people kind of are talking about all the same things. So it's constantly like saddle hunting, run and gun hunting, public land hunting, and then like the traditional thing. And it just like, they kind of like are all, it's just constantly, it right in front of you. So, the further I went looking into like going mobile and getting in there, because I remember all the magazines back in the day where in the back it had the saddles, and it had the guy. It was probably a picture of John Eberhart even at the time, in like some big gnarly tree leaned out shooting, and it just never seemed like realistic. And then you look at all the things that are being posted and about how light it is, and it's just kind of like right in the forefront of your mind. And like John says his pack was 60 pounds. Like, well, get rid of the stand and sticks. I think was like 30.
Yep.
So you get rid of that. For what's the mantis's 15 ounces.
15 ounces.
Without without everything.
I'll take that.
Right. And
that's we just got the new XOP stands.
Oh, did you?
With sticks. So
yeah.
Up until now, I've always done like kind of a run and gun but I've always had a climber, so it limits your tree. You got to have a pole tree, and then you're out in the open if you can't find one with good cover behind it. So the sticks, and the strap-on tree or stand, definitely you can definitely get in better trees, but the saddle's definitely intriguing.
Yeah, and I hunted out of a climber a couple times. Like you said, one year I bought a climber, and I was like, I'm going to go exclusively climber. And just like you said, you got to find the perfect tree. And I hated hunting with it in the mornings because it was so damn loud. And I'm like, why am I doing this? Just because I want to go in other areas. So then I was like, well, I'll buy the money or I'll spend the money and buy some more stands and just do pre-hungs. But now you see these guys going in with a stand on their back and everything, and I want to do it so bad. But with the time I have and everything, it's like I don't want to be, I wouldn't say wasting sits, and I'm not saying I would be wasting a sit by running and gunning, but this year I had a heck of a time trying to get out and put the stands up. I did get up because of, I've got a little daughter. She's 13 months old, and my wife, she's a nurse, so she works, 3/12s, and it seems like that lands on every weekend. So I'm single daddy a lot, on the weekends, and so it's like I'm just trying to find time, and that's kind of one of the ways that I was like, well, I want a saddle because then I don't have to hang any, and for me to go in with a saddle already on me and put in whether it's screw-ins or sticks or the wild edge steps, like that's nothing for me to do, and get in any stand or any tree I want and go in, anywhere, because climbing up in the mornings in a saddle, I was super quiet. It's all about how quiet you can be, really, and it worked out really well. And I did actually end up killing a couple deer out of it, but I struggled a little bit. I'll be the first one to tell you. I just don't think I was as experienced as I should have been with it or comfortable, Yeah.
Well, what's funny about like kind of what you just said was for me, this year is almost like the exact opposite of what you said, but it's all along the same vein as that I don't want to waste sits. So last year I hunted, and for the past 10 years it's been exclusively climber. I mean, we've just hunted climbers, and that's it. So we were running and gunning with climbers, but you're constantly searching for a tree, and I started to my hunting started to evolve last year into to look for different areas or different terrain, or where target some buck bedding, or just kind of do a little bit more in-season scouting. And I messed up on probably one of the biggest bucks I've seen in Michigan. He was probably 130, I would say. But I waited for the right wind. I snuck into the spot. I thought the corn was going to be up, but they had cut it before I got in there. And so I walked across this 500-yard open field with a good wind, snuck around into this area that I'd never been in, except for I'd seen a good buck in there, like out in the bean field that was on the other side of this little pocket. I got up in there, and there was no trees to get up in with my climber, and I had to cross this little tiny indent, this little cutout in the field where I'd seen these deer a week before. And as soon as I stepped out into that wind, that buck stood up less than 60 yards from me and just took off. And it was just because there was no tree for me to get up in with that climber. And I walked over across and got up a tree, and I had two does get up right in front of me that were still, upwind for me. So that was one frustrating thing where I saw the benefits of the hang and hunt situation there. And so this year I sold my climber. I mean, I still have a old loggy body. I had a lone wolf sit and climb, which kind of alleviated a lot of that noise because there's none of that hollow metal, and then that has the climbing bands are rubber and flexible. Yep. So it's a lot quieter, and I got really efficient with it. But I sold it just to get out of my comfort zone, so that I had to I guess that I would be going to different areas and different things instead of just going back to the same trees that I always hunted, because I felt like I was wasting sits because it would be like, well, I didn't scout or I didn't put in enough time, so I'm just going to go to these areas where I always go, and I felt like I was hunting just to hunt rather than hunting to kill. And so that's, Saturday night I went into an area that I only looked at on a map, and I walked in there 3/4 of a mile, went over my boots, got up, and I walked into an area, and it looked exactly like what I was looking for. Like I should have went further because there wasn't like a lot of buck sign right there.
Yep.
But I don't think I've ever been that excited to hunt a spot that I'd never been before. That didn't have like the buck sign. I mean, I walked right on the edge of this marsh where, there was all the dogwood and bedding and like kind of a pinch point where it went up into like a little oak, plateau or whatever, and ended up seeing 2 does. Got back to the truck. It took me an hour to get out of there in the dark with my headlamp died, and I was using a little tiny LED light in my mouth. I went over both my boots on the way back out, and I got twisted up, and I came out 300 yards down the road from where my truck was parked. But I got back to the truck, and I just felt invigorated to like go back in there the next time, and I was like more excited, and I didn't feel like that was like a wasted hunt sitting in an area where either I was going to run into guys or I was going to see maybe one deer. Like I put myself in a position where I was like, at any point a good buck could walk by here that's, hasn't been pressured.
Right.
And that's really difficult to do, where we're at here. But I switched it up to kind of get away from my comfort zone and waste sits, just because it's easy. I can just find there's a pole tree right there. I'll just get up there and watch. And I guess that my thought process has changed from just wanting to see deer to wanting to kill. And it's not a specific deer. It's not like an age class deer, but it's like I want to put myself in the best position to kill a good deer, that's in the area. And I'm putting myself in spots where I think they're going to be versus where there's just deer sign. So
Definitely. And then, you kind of brought up something that triggered something in my head where you're talking about, you were walking across a wide open ag field. Was that a morning or was that a evening when you were doing that?
It was evening.
Okay, so, and that's kind of, I got a question for you guys. And, a lot of guys out there are looking for that, special potion. What is the remedy to kill a big, it's got to be X, Y, and Z, right? That's what everybody wants, And I even kind of got into that a little bit. Like if I do this and the barometric pressure is at 30.2 and the wind's out of the northeast and stuff like that, like I'm going to kill a big buck. I know it. I kind of got in that for a little bit, but then again, like I was like, no, that's those factors, those things factor into it. But it's like trying to figure out more of your farm and figuring out your deer and what they do on that. Because, like, you can listen to Mark Drury all you want and how things, experiences he has and what he believes. That guy's a wizard when it comes to whitetails. But him on my 80 acres is going to be totally different than it is on his Iowa 80 acres. So, are you, what do you guys look for when you're hunting? Are you going into particular areas only on certain winds, or do you have so I had this discussion with my cousin the other day. We have an unbelievable crop of acorns this year, and I've got white oak trees in my yard and they were dropping really early, so that kind of told me like I need to have a couple spots for just acorn sits, you know what I mean? And do you guys have any sort of thing like that, like how do you kind of go into areas and what the tactics you're using to hunt? Do you look at barometric pressure? Do you use, do you believe in the moon guide or the moon? What are you guys looking for?
Well, I kind of look at the moon guide, whatever, but days I can hunt, I'm going to go hunt. So I do play the wind. I'm a firm believer in that. I used to have a scent lock suit, but you can do everything you can possibly do, but the deer is still going to smell you.
Right.
If you come in the wrong wind and you're trying to get close to a bedding area, you might see some deer, but you're not going to see a mature buck or a decent buck or even a mature doe. So I try to pick my spots, to go in on correct wind. And then the main thing I'm looking for is I'm just trying to find spots where there's no people, or trying to hunt around people. So like when I'm scouting, I'm just out, I'll walk through the woods, and had him kind of laugh before, because like I pull up my Onyx and I put a turkey every time I find a stand. He's like, turkey? I'm like, yeah, that's someone's tree stand. So I mark all those spots, and then I can kind of lay out how I want to hunt around it. So that's how I do it.
Yeah, and so like I texted you, I said, all of my tactics are unproven, because I'm switching everything up this year, and I guess one of the things that I found out the other night when I was, in the middle of all that everything goes wrong type situation is, when we were out west, we were 5 miles, 10 miles from anything, just using Onyx in like the middle of nowhere, just, trusting the compass in our phones. And, we had looked at the maps extensively before we went out there. And this is out in Idaho, and land that we'd never been on before in our lives. And being able to read the map there and look at the terrain and kind of lay everything out, kind of transition back here to whitetail hunting. And John and I joked it was going to make, whitetail hunting seem like no problem. So his 60-pound tree stand on his back, we did, 105, 110 miles in 8 days, with our packs on our back and everything like that. So a couple miles in one day with that, and with a 4-hour sit in between,
right,
isn't really a big deal.
Right.
But so I've been looking at the maps, and I've been basically looking at places now that are difficult to access. And I've been like, the guys from Behind the Bow, the Hunting Public, DIY Sportsman. I've been, and obviously the Hunting Beast and Dan Infault and all of those guys that, are consistently killing big deer, and they're going in. And we talked, at length with Zach about not going in at, 2 hours before dark. They're hunting whenever they can. So they're walking in at first light, and kind of like what you said, where you're looking for a tree or anything like that. They're just going in right as it's getting first light and picking their way through there. And they're going in, that last hour of light where they can hunt, and just trying to put themselves in a spot.
Right.
So I'm looking at the map and kind of playing off of what those guys are doing. They're saying, okay, well, this marsh area and this bedding area and these oaks. So that's what I'm going in. I'm looking at the map before I'm even going in anywhere, and saying, okay, well, where are the people going to be? So all the things, when you look at a map and you say, that probably looks good right there, that's what everybody else is seeing too. So I've had to like push my thought process and to go, well, that looks like it really sucks out there, but that looks like it'd be good. It will suck to get out there, but it looks like a good spot. So three-quarters of the guys aren't going to go out there, so I want to go farther. And so it's kind of like pushing to the middle of all of these spots into things that look good, and using a lot of the maps and Onyx, and Google Earth. When you zoom in, you can zoom in all the way and see game trails and that sort of thing. So just trying to, like John said, get away from people. But that I'm looking at. I was telling my father-in-law the story about, getting in the water and all that stuff. And he's like, how did you find that spot? Like, why are you hunting there? And I'm like, I looked at big pieces of state land around me that didn't have access, that didn't have 102 tracks going through them. And then I'm just trying to get away from people. And so that's what I'm doing.
Okay. Yeah, because the reason why I ask is, I don't know if you guys listened to my podcast I put out yesterday or I think it was yesterday, about the deer that I shot last weekend. And he's the oldest deer I have on the farm, and I did some things that I told myself I'd never do. I used to be that guy that was like, oh, it's kind of sprinkling out. I'm not going to go out. The deer aren't going to be moving. But I kind of, last couple of years been throwing that out the window, because some things that I've been witnessing, not only hunting, but like filming with Casey, and it's been telling me otherwise, and I've been growing as a hunter the last 4 or 5 years doing that. So my plan going into that hunt was, I knew this deer was in the area, didn't really know where he was, figured I kind of knew where he was going to be bedding or living, his core area, but I knew I was within his core area. And I knew I had a great wind. I had a wind out of the west, and I was coming in from the east. It was in my face the whole time, and it's about 12 mile an hour, I think. So it was kind of windy, kind of not loud, but a little windy. But I was I walked through a standing bean field to get to my stand, and I'm hunting a 3-acre patch of woods. So I was like, I'm doing 2 things I told myself I would never do, and that's walk through an ag field in the morning to get to my stand. And the other thing was going into a small acre piece of ground when there could be deer bedding in that acres, or in that woods, that I would blow out, you know what I mean? So I'm like, what, I'm not gonna know unless I try, and that was kind of going back to telling you, do something that's kind of out of the ordinary you'd never do. Well, that was one of those moments, and I'm like, what, I'm never gonna know unless I try it. I'm just gonna do it. And just so happened that deer came by me, and I didn't execute the shot, but I had an opportunity. So it kind of, all those guys out there looking for that secret potion, I really don't think there is one. You know what I mean? It's just kind of got to go with your gut and try some new things, and you might learn a little more than what you thought. So that's kind of why I asked that, and just to see if you guys do anything out of the ordinary, or or where your heads are with that, I guess.
Well, and with kind of like what you said with that buck last year, I mean, I'd seen that deer, and it was on a piece of public property. You have to buy a pass to go in there, and it's bow hunting only. And it was all corn all around this. It was probably maybe 2 acres of standing timber. And there was a little field. Well, on the other side of that, on the north side of that, was a bean field. And driving around scouting, we saw a big buck, and he bounded back into there. Well, it was standing corn. I was trying to figure out, well, is he going to be bedded in the corn, or are they going to be in that little patch of woods? Is he going to be there, when I get back there? I don't know. So the first opportunity I had to hunt it, it was a good wind. I drove in there, and then all the corn was gone, and it was like, well, what am I supposed to do? And so I was like, well, I'll never know if I don't go up in there. And what ended up happening is I learned a ton by doing that, because I knew, and I guess I had thought about, well, if he was going to be bedding in there, and if he was going to be bedding in there with that wind, he'd be, facing this way. So I went around and made a big loop, and it was a pretty stiff wind, so I was able to get in there pretty quietly. But then I went back in there later and saw exactly where he was bedding. And so now this year, I'm just kind of, they switched the crops around, so I haven't been back in there, but it's like, I'm just kind of waiting for that right opportunity to go back in there. And now I'm confident that I can just walk in there and kill him. I mean, if he's there, I'm going to kill him. So I don't feel like that was like wasted. Like in the moment, like I was devastated, because I didn't have the same mindset as I do now. I had the mindset of, well, I don't have anywhere else to hunt. I guess I might as well try it. And then I was right. I was like validated in going in there, and it was just a matter of, there was one tree I could have got up, and I would have been about 6 feet off the ground, and I felt like there was this little ridge, and I felt if he was going to get up, he was probably going to walk down that ridge, and we would have been nose to nose. So
right.
that was out.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
that's just one of those little pieces that and I think that deer will continue to use that, and that's one of the things that those other guys that we're following along with are saying, is that if that deer gets out of there alive, he's going to use that bed again because it worked.
Yeah, well, not only him, but another buck too. I mean, there's a reason why he was bedded
Right.
there.
Right.
He felt safe, and other bucks in the area are going to do that. They're going to come in and find that. So even if he was killed, another deer is going to come in and move into that same spot, most likely.
Yep. Yeah, and that's, Casey, I was telling you, he likes to go in the morning. He likes to go at like right when it's cracking day. You know what I mean? So we can kind of see and like methodically like kind of not bump deer in a way. If we can see him, we can kind of hunker down or whatever we want to do. And it's worked out really well for us. But me, like in Michigan, and you guys know as well, like we have to be 100% on our game at all times. You're almost walking on eggshells every time you step into the woods, it seems like. So like going into this hunt, I wanted to be sitting in my stand like ready to go and doing nothing but just sitting there an hour before it was even thinking about getting light, because my thought process was if I do bump any deer, hopefully they just go off a little ways and maybe they'll have some time to simmer down a little bit, or what kind of was that, or I knew they weren't going to smell me because I was coming in from the downwind side, and it was dark. I mean, it was blackout, and I don't use a light going in, so all they could do was hear me coming through the beans. And I did bump one doe that I know of. She blew a couple times, ran into the woods, and I mean, when I say a couple times, maybe 5 or 6 times, and that was about it. And then the next deer I saw was him, and he made his way. Well, I saw a little buck too, but next deer I saw was him, and he made his way all the way over. And I'm trying to rack my brain of what he was doing. I mean, he made. I realize he took the path he did, but I'm trying to realize what he was doing. It honestly looked like he was trying to check each little woodlot for like hot does, but I mean, it was like the 12th or 13th. What was it? The 13th of October. I mean, that wasn't even rutting yet, but I don't know. He was just out for a stroll that morning, and he just happened to do what I thought or hoped he was going to do, and I just screwed it up. So, which still is killing me. We're getting ready to take that cornfield off that I lost blood going into, and are either going to find him or we're not going to find him. So I honestly think he's still alive. I went out this morning before I went to work. I dropped my daughter off at daycare, and I got to drive by one of my farms to that farm actually to go back to work. And I stopped in there, and probably shouldn't have went in there when I did, but it was the only time I had, and I knew there was nothing in there because I can glass it all from the road. So I snuck in there and made sure all my cameras were good to go, and got out of there because I'm leaving Wednesday and I won't be back until like the 9th of November. So it'll have good time to sit down or settle down, and nobody will be in there, and hopefully I can come back and maybe get another opportunity at him or one of the other bucks. I mean, I've got like one shooter already got shot. I've got 3 other bucks that I think are still there. They were there all summer, so we'll see.
Now, when you're talking about that you lost blood with that deer, we just had a tracker on the podcast last night. Have you ever thought about utilizing a deer tracker?
So one of my buddies has got a tracking dog, and he wasn't available that weekend. He owns his own business, and he just couldn't make it out. And I had called another guy, same thing. He was already on a track, and he had 2 more that day. And it seemed like everybody I called just couldn't make their way out there. So then I took my lab. I took her with me because I felt like if I got downwind of these little woodlots or the corn, that she could possibly maybe trigger something. I knew she wouldn't like find blood and take it, but it was one of those things like maybe because if she smells deer in our backyard, because there's deer in our backyard all the time. There's deer that bed in our backyard. You can see the beds, and you can see them under our mercury light. And she just doesn't like deer really in the smell of them. So I was thinking maybe a hunch. I only had me and my father-in-law, my dad, and my 2 nephews, and they were just kind of running around the woods. But I just felt like she'd be running around all over, and maybe she would just stumble upon something. That was kind of my thought. But yeah, a tracker has did cross my mind. I did call a couple of them and everybody was busy. It was just like, wasn't my weekend, I guess.
Now, were you filming it when you got the shot?
I figured you were going to ask me that. I wasn't filming, no. I just actually this summer sold all of my personal camera gear, and just because I have so much camera gear at the studio that I can take, and it was one of those like kind of last minute deals. I was like, I kind of talked myself into going the night before, and I didn't have a cameraman available with me. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to miss the second day of a cold front. So it's just one of those things. And I have a couple POV cameras. I got a couple GoPros and stuff that I usually rig up and hunt with, and just to get like a wide angle shot over the shoulder or something or on my bow. And I actually didn't even take them in, and see, I missed it all. So I kind of kicked myself in the butt for that, but I don't know.
Could you tell where did you hit him?
I hit him high shoulder, but I actually think I hit him. I think I honestly hit him a little higher than. I don't know. I rushed the shot because he was in my last hole, and he was going to get by me, and when I shot him, it was the biggest, loudest crack I've ever heard, and he ran off, and the arrow came out after, 40 or 50 yards, and then he just walked off. He just kind of stopped. He licked himself and walked off, and then I'm like, I shot him on the right side, and he walked away from me, and all he would show me is his left side the whole time. So I never saw where the hole was. But I left my arrow, came back later that day, and I got 8 inches of penetration. So I went through the first shoulder, and then it lodged in the backside shoulder. So I was trying to, and the broadhead broke off in him, and I was trying to, look at a deer anatomy all day, and I was like trying to dissect it from these pictures and everything, and I'm like, how far does the lung go up behind the shoulders? And it's not very much. There's about like 3 inches that there's really nothing there, and I think that's where I got it, and wasn't anybody's fault. It wasn't my equipment's fault. It was my fault. It was, I say anybody, it was my fault. It was, what I meant by that is it wasn't my bow's fault. I shot my bow after that. It was shooting great. Wasn't the broadhead's fault. Wasn't arrow's fault. It was all my fault. I mean, I rushed it, and I think I watched the deer walk to me for 45 minutes, so that didn't help by any means. But I might be trying to look for an excuse. I don't know, but I don't know. I've been thinking about this deer since last year, and once I saw him this summer, and I watched him in the beans all summer. I filmed him. I've got velvet footage of him. I'd go and glass him. I knew where he was going to be every night. I could tell you, hey guys, you want to come out and see this deer, and he'd be there. But he did move ranges from summer to fall. Like, he moved. Well, it doesn't seem like a long way, but he moved about 1,000 yards as a crow flies ranges from summer when the velvet came off. So I don't know. I'm just hoping he's still out there and still going, and maybe get another opportunity at him, I guess.
Yeah, by the sounds of it, that's pretty, low percentage kill shot. High shoulder.
Yep.
Forward like that.
Yeah, and that's what everybody was saying on all forums, Archery Talk. I was reading everything, and everybody's like, you're in for a long night, and the deer usually don't bed down. They usually run, and I'm like, well, if I only got one lung, deer can live on one lung, and it's like,
yeah, that's,
man. So he just didn't act like he was hurt, really. He didn't limp when he walked away. He licked himself, and it was almost kind of like somebody came up and punched him in the side. You know what I mean? That's about it. And I don't know. He's got my broadhead with him. I know that. So
with that, what I always ask this question: what equipment, what bow are you shooting right now?
I shot him with my Carbonair, with a PSE Carbonair, shooting 72 pounds.
Okay.
I was shooting a Black Eagle arrow, which I'm not now. I'm shooting a new bow and new arrows now. So,
Okay.
But yeah, I shot him at 20 yards. I'm only shooting about 287 feet per second with my setup. I'm not a very big guy. I've got a 28-inch draw, and so that's about as much as I can get out of a bow. But I got good penetration.
Right.
I was surprised. But now, what's that?
What broadhead are you using?
I was using a Rage hypodermic.
Okay. Yep.
You know, I was trying out some new broadheads this year, and it wasn't like they were not performing the way I wanted them to. It was just, it's kind of a head deal right now. And it was like, I've been shooting Rage for 11 years and I've never had an issue with a Rage. I've watched more deer die with a Rage in sight than anything else. And it's with Rage, it's you either love them or you hate them. There's no, either guys have had the worst experience with them or guys have had the best experience with them. And I've had great experiences with them. And like I said, it wasn't the broadhead's fault. I actually was impressed that the broadhead blew through one shoulder and went to the other shoulder and got 8 inches of penetration. I was impressed with that. I'm not going to stop using them just because of that, but, I don't know. Just one of those things.
It definitely did its job. I used to shoot the original Rage broadheads, and I had the buck I killed down in Ohio I didn't have a good blood trail or anything. I had to wait and find it the next day, and just found it by following the trail. But the hypodermics and the new tripans are definitely a step above what the old Rage used to be.
Right before they came out with the tripan, I've exclusively shot the Rage Extreme, and 1 year I shot a doe like right at the point of the shoulder, basically it was lower. I hit my deer high. I shot a doe lower in the shoulder, like right in line with the heart basically, and it blew through both shoulders and stuck in the ground behind her. And when that happened, I said, this is, and a lot of guys are like, you can't get penetration with a Rage. Well, I'm sorry what kind of experience you had with them, but I've had great experience with them. So after that, and then it was really hard for me to go from that to the hypodermic. And the first deer I shot with a hypodermic, it went 11 yards and died, a Missouri buck that I killed. And I don't know, it's just one of those things. I haven't tried the tripan yet, and I really don't need to,
Yeah, I shot last year. I ended up just killing a doe it was actually New Year's Eve. We're all up north as a family, and I went out and I was like, well, I'm gonna go kill a deer for the freezer. So I shot a doe, and she was actually like frontal, and when I shot, she ducked a little bit, and it like knocked her right backwards, and she was dead by the time. I mean, I thought maybe it hit her in the spine. I was gonna have to go and either put another arrow, but by the time I got to her, she was already expired. So
yeah,
the tripan's definitely works quite well.
Yeah. So, do you guys have any trips lined up here to do some whitetail hunting this fall at all?
No, I'm headed up to our property for the first week in November. We hunted in Ohio for a few years, back and forth, and this year kind of a lot of our time went to our elk hunt. I mean, I had 11 days off of work, and we hunted out there. We ended up hunting for 8 days, so that ate up a lot of. My work is pretty flexible, but family time. I've got a 3-year-old daughter as well, and my wife's a nurse and works 3/12. So I got everything you were saying.
You're in the same boat, man.
I know all about it. So yeah, that's pretty much. I'm gonna sneak away for another week.
Yep.
I got the okay from my wife. So
there you go.
Yeah, I'm just hunting around here, and then up north. I hunt Manistee County with my buddy's got a cabin up there, but my focus mainly is my son. He's 15, and so I'm taking my time with him. Like, that's what my focus was last year. It's why I didn't kill a deer until the end of the season. I was just trying to get him a deer, get him on, get his first first deer with his bow under his belt. So I think this weekend we're going to go up north, and then probably the following weekend. So
That's cool.
No big trips. Yeah, the Idaho was my big trip for this year.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I've got Ohio. I'm gonna go back down. I had 3 good days to hunt. I every sit I had, I saw at least 130-inch deer, but they were 3-year-olds, and I really want 100. I'm not looking for an inch. I'm looking for like an age. I want a 4-year-old deer out of state for sure, and especially on with Chris and Casey's leases, we're trying to do some management. Where we just don't want to kill the 3-year-olds right now, and we've got a lot of does too. So I plan on going back down to Ohio one more time at least, maybe twice, hunting for a buck. But then I think us, camera guys and stuff like that, we're going to try to do a late season hunt down there if the opportunity presents itself, just to go kill some does and, have like a couple days down there just filming everything and just kind of having deer camp,
Yeah, that's one of the things for me is I've considered going back down to Ohio even for just the later season, because I don't think it's like goes into February or something.
Yeah, yep.
Down there, so by the time we're done hunting up here, there's still hunting to be done.
right.
And for me, it's a 7-hour drive to our property in the UP, where the last couple of years we've seen some decent bucks. I saw a really legit Michigan buck up there. It probably went 130, I would say, maybe a little smaller, but it had a lot of points. It was at least a 10.
Yep.
I would have guessed it a 12 point, and in Michigan, that's kind of that's what we grew up on. It was 8 point, 10 point,
Right.
not inches. But where we were hunting in Ohio was like a 6-hour drive, and the deer down there are just in a different class, so I'm considering making Ohio more of a later season, like once you're done hunting in Michigan, move down to Ohio.
Yep.
Yeah, I could probably do something like that once. Although February ice fishing, yeah, I gotta wait I like heading over there towards the bay there and get some walleye.
Oh yeah,
so.
good walleye fishing over here for sure.
Yeah, if the ice is good.
Yeah, yeah. I've been wanting to get a lease in Ohio with some buddies, and it's just hard for me to justify the price right now when I don't know how much I'll be able to hunt it. So that's going to be something that's probably, a little later in life. I've got a really good friend that lets me come out and hunt in Missouri whenever I want. I didn't hunt there last year, and it's looking like I probably won't be able to hunt there this year, but I've taken some pretty good deer out there late season when there's food and everything, and I love hunting Missouri. It's a lot of fun. It's a 10-hour drive to him, which isn't terrible, since our Kansas lease is 14-hour drive. And that gets old. But down to Ohio, it's only a 5-hour drive for us. So Ohio is, it's relatively cheap over the counter. They did boost their prices. I just bought the non-resident license with a either sex tag and a doe tag, and I think it was like $202. I think it was, which is still pretty cheap.
It went up a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 150.
I think it was 160 for both.
Yep.
Yeah.
For both.
Yep.
So, is it the confidence thing? Is it the management thing, or why not state land? Why a lease? Because we've done real well. As far as like seeing deer and getting opportunities on state land down in Ohio.
Yeah, yours was a what, 150?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of more of a time thing, I guess you can say.
Right.
I felt like
Well, and that's what I was meaning by the confidence thing, not confidence in like ability spot.
Yeah.
It was just more of like now you know where you're going to go.
I understand. Yep. And that's something coming into this year, and like you guys had said, earlier in the podcast about these new things coming up with the saddles and the traditional. It kind of goes in waves. And now it's the DIY kind of like state land, public land, do it yourself, like run and gun kind of stuff. And I've kind of latched onto it. I really want to do it, but in my head, I'm thinking, the only time that's to good and go to better your odds is probably in the rut when I can't hunt. When I normally don't have a lot of time to hunt, which is, you can kill a deer anytime if you're in the right place at the right time. Doesn't matter where you're at. It's something it's definitely on my radar and I really want to do. And that would be like an Ohio thing for me. Like, I want to be able to find a spot just over the border that's a good hunting, that's, I can get to in like 2 or 3 hours and be able to maximize a full weekend, or take off on a Friday morning and hunt Thursday, or Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I think that's probably where I'm at with it right now. It's something that's definitely on my radar. Lee, actually, our other field producer, he's hunted. He hasn't in the last couple of years, but he's got a spot that he goes into Indiana, and he's done really well down there at state land. But even he said, he's like, it took me years to figure out that area, and finally he's like, I had a lot of years where I just didn't do very good, and then it just started clicking for him, and I want to do it. It's just I haven't made the leap to do it yet,
Right. Well, it's intimidating. Like I said, this year I've been out, I think 4 or 5 times, and not sat a tree that I've ever been in or even seen before. Like, I'm not going into spots where I've traditionally gone. It's just a matter of reading the sign. And I guess as far as seeing, I did put a couple of trail cameras out on one of the pieces of public right near us, and I got one decent buck on there and another little buck, but I've only got bucks on my camera, and it wasn't an abundance of deer. It was just bucks. So it was a little bit of validation of at least I'm choosing the right areas or getting in there. But it is kind of intimidating to just say, okay, well, I'm just going to go and sit in here. But I think, I know you had talked to Greg Litzinger, and then we talked to Curtis Zabel from Behind the Bow, and talking to those guys and their stories of, Greg the one year sat a whole season and saw 9 deer the whole time. Yep. And, Curtis, in his film, The Life of a Public Land Bow Hunter, he chronicles how many days he is into the season and how many deer he's seeing or not seeing, and just the grind it out. And I think for me, that's been a kind of like, not necessarily like a confidence booster, but just lets me know that, these guys that are getting it done on state land, it's not just go out one sit, kill them. It's a lot of bouncing around and a lot of work. And so it's just a matter of like you said, with your buddy in Indiana, is figuring it out.
Putting your time in.
But each one of those little things, like for me, is a confidence booster. Like, okay, so I've only got bucks on camera. They might not be great bucks, but they're the bucks that are in the area, and they're where I set my cameras. So that's a little bit of validation. Now just move further and try and figure out where they come from and that sort of thing. Like I said, getting back into those spots where there's not human sign. When I came out in the dark, I didn't have the brightest light, I'll tell you that, but I didn't see tacks everywhere and ribbons and everything like that. So all these little wins, but it's been a definite, it's tough to only have so much time and put it all in there. But I guess I would challenge you to say that if you had a lease and you were doing farm work down on your lease and all that stuff, the time that you'd be taking to go down there and manage your food plots and doing that sort of thing, you could also be scouting on public land until you figured out.
Right, 100%. And that's stuff that I've really, fought with myself on. It's like you do so much work for yourself on doing, putting food plots in and hanging stands and everything. Why not take 1 year and put the time and effort into finding a piece on a map, on X or something, going down there and scouting it, and really trying to hone your skills and see how you can do it, And I honestly, I think it might be just an excuse, but I really want to be able to hunt it in the rut, or not even just the rut. My favorite time to hunt's the 25th through the the 1st of November, 25th of October. So and Casey and I usually leave around the 20th to the 25th, so we're usually gone until Thanksgiving. This year's a little different. I might actually be able to be in Michigan for the gun opener for the first time since 2011, which will be fun if I'm here. But I think it's been, like that time and intimidation's a lot of it too, because I grew up not having to need to think about public land. I've always had a private land at my fingertips basically, and I just haven't as of recent really thought of it, but it's something definitely on my radar, and I agree with you 100%. Putting in that time and trying to figure a piece out and really do it. It's definitely something I really been thinking about.
Well, good, man. I don't know. It's real easy to get down on Michigan because of the hunters and the pressure and all the pettiness of my spot and your spot, that sort of thing. It doesn't do a whole lot for the sport. And I really enjoy, like you had said, talking to like-minded people. But, chances are you and I can look at the same map and we're not going to go to the same spot.
Right.
Unless we're going to the spot that just looks like I said earlier, like the easy spot, like where everybody's going to be drawn to. So, once you, I think, try and at least map out where the guys are going to be, you can try and get around that.
Yep. That's something that too, I've got a couple buddies that have been wanting to do the Ohio public land as well together, and that helps too, having people to do it with, instead of just going down by yourself and, having people go with you and kind of putting a couple minds together and doing it. So that's something that's, it's in the talks, and I think it'd be great to do a public land story on television. You know what I mean? And now with the way that our show Rival Wild's going, with us being in front of the camera a little more, I want to do a storyline here in Michigan, following me with Chris and Casey, as they do their hunt. Like they might have a storyline in Kansas or Ohio. Mine might be Michigan. It's me just trying to kill a Michigan deer and having someone film me the whole year, and doing that. I think that'd be really cool. And even on a same thing on a public land thing where you just dedicate yourself to public land and really try to get it done that way as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely drawn to the public land guys. I mean, if you can't tell, but it's just, it made, I don't want it to come off the wrong way because, you had said earlier about the TV guys getting a bad rap and everything like that, but things that are, I guess, more that you can relate to, that are more attainable. And it's one of the things where when you were talking about hunting Kansas, hunting Ohio, hunting Missouri, I didn't hear you talk about filming their hunts and on their leases in Michigan,
right.
And it's just, I think even for yourself, as you're targeting these older age class deer, in Michigan, it's not that 175, ghost buck, that you blew or anything like that. It's always a good deer for Michigan. And so the public land struggle, I guess, and getting mature deer, whatever the antler size, is one of the things that, like I say, I think we're drawn more to, and also that struggle too. And I think that's one of the things that most of these public land guys, in that both the information and the way that they're putting their product out there, is they're showing all the struggle and the failures, I guess.
Yep.
And it doesn't have to be, whatever ends up for you 21 minutes of the TV slot versus like the whole story. They can make it as long as they want to.
Exactly. Yep. I totally understand. Yeah. Yep.
And so for that, the guy sitting here in his garage, dreaming about, shooting, whatever age class deer is their trophy. It kind of goes back to the one buck, the antler point restrictions. Everybody's going to have a different trophy, but I think everybody relates to that, the hard work struggle that's kind of in your, I don't know, in your social class or whatever, you know, with the $250,000 combine rolls by and you're sitting there watching a Boone and Crockett buck, and it's not the one you were after.
Yep.
So,
and it's all relative
it's tough.
too, you know, to where
Oh, for
you know,
sure.
I mean, look at Lee and Tiffany out there. He's trying to kill 6-year-old deer, you know, and we're just trying to get a glimpse at a 2.5 to 3.5-year-old deer, you know, and it's all like,
Yep.
Right.
and everybody's like, oh, I want to see these TV guys to come to Michigan and hunt my property and kill this deer there. Well, you know, it's probably not going to happen because those deer, I mean, they do exist here, but also they have a lot of things out in, you know, different parts of the country that we don't have, which we have 1 million hunters or whatever the number is, you know. And here's a little stat for you, which is, when I heard this, it was just unbelievable. So Casey and I hunted Iowa last year, all season. Well, where we go, where we have property, that county of Iowa, there is more bow hunters in Michigan than there is people in that county. That's crazy. And you wonder why there's giants out there. You know, like you drive
Right.
down roads and you won't see houses for a while. You know, but just think about that. There's more bow hunters in Michigan than there is people in that county. That's a whole county. So it's just that alone, you know, pressure-wise, that alone, I mean, you're going to see big deer, you know. So it's just all relative.
Yeah, I think it's all good because that same I just want to shoot my buck guy, that's the guy with the bone collector shirt on who loves watching the Giants fall, you know, on TV, you know. So it's getting the sport out there. And what I thought was interesting earlier when you said that, you know, you were able to show one of your hunts on TV at school. I don't think you could do that today. At least not.
You couldn't. No,
not here.
you couldn't.
No,
In the PC world, I think the hunter, you know, and I think if you were to look at hunter numbers, you know, across the board, they're going down, and it's because of all of this PC, everything, you know, I don't know. I don't even know. Social, what do you call it? Political correct, you know, you can't show guns, you can't show blood, the way that YouTube's changing, and the kids aren't being exposed to it. So anything that's out there that's actually on TV and putting a good product out there, and that's promoting hunting and good ethical sportsmanship, I guess, is good for the sport as a whole.
For sure. You know, and I had a guy come up to me the other day, and he goes, he knows what I do and everything, and he's like, why do you still hunt Michigan when you have all of, you know, this other stuff that you can hunt in other states? And I said, you know, I really don't know, but I said I do know that I grew up a Michigan hunter, and, you know, Michigan hunting, you know, it runs deep, like it's a tradition. And I said that I get more gratification trying to kill a 3.5-year-old deer here in Michigan, whatever the size is, than I am trying to kill a 160-inch deer somewhere else. It's just one of those things. I can't tell you what it is. Maybe it's just the challenge of so many people are here and there's not a lot of those deer around. So my 3.5-year-old, possibly 120-inch deer is like a 160-inch deer other places. Maybe that's what it is. But I just, and it could be the convenience since it's right here in my backyard, but I've hunted, you know, my family farm that's been in my family for, you know, almost 100 years. You know, they used to run horse and buggy and cattle on it. The cattle fences are still up on it, you know, in some areas. So there's a lot of history there. You know, my great-great-grandfather ran cattle on that, and that's, you know, it's just a lot of history, and it's a lot of fun in deer camp, you know. Like I said, if, you know, I love chasing these deer, and, you know, I just love just trying to figure them out. Like last weekend when I had an opportunity at that deer, I mean, that was a 4.5-year-old Michigan deer that I was trying to figure out, and I got an opportunity at him on October 12th, you know, or 13th. I can't remember the date now, but it's like what people say the quote unquote October lull is coming into, which I don't really believe in, but some people do. That's just my opinion. And I got an opportunity at that deer. Everything that I practiced, it paid off, and I did something that I always told myself I'd never do, and it worked out for me, except, like I said, the shot. So, but I just love that chase here in Michigan,
Yeah. It's one of the things that I struggle with, driving all the way up to the UP, and I don't think I would go up there this year. I mean, because I'm excited about hunting down here, and I feel I'm trying to get out of that comfort zone. So I'm going to go up there. I'm only going to have so much time, and it's going to be however much of a grind to just fall back into like, well, if I go here, I can see deer, versus going out and venturing out, because it's pretty intimidating country.
Yeah.
Up there. I mean, from the northern edge of our property to the nearest road, from the back edge of our property is 3 miles, so of state. So if you were to get twisted up in there, you could go for a long ways. But the deer camp aspect, my father-in-law is going up there, my brother's going to be up there, and that's why I'm going, is for that tradition. So that, I think, above all else in Michigan, is why people still hunt Michigan. I mean,
yeah, it's still hunting.
And I know, and I think I would have to, like, in your case, and I don't want to like target you specifically, but for anybody who says that I don't even hunt in Michigan anymore, it's like, it's almost like they're not like a real hunter, because it's just like they just want something easier, or they want more gratification or whatever. Because to me, just like you said, it's like the tradition of hunting.
Yeah.
In Michigan, it's embracing the struggle.
Exactly.
I don't know.
And I'll never ever stop hunting Michigan. I've got, and I don't want to be that guy. It's like, I'm just, when I die, or when I want all these bucks on the wall. It's not that. I've been fortunate enough to put 4 deer on the wall though. And my deer, the biggest one's 130 inches. I've got anywhere from 120 to 130, and those are great deer. They're giants to me. I love those, because you know what? Every time I look at those deer, I'm like, the stories that come out of them, that's all I care about. You know what I mean? And it's not. Everybody gets wrapped up into inches, and I do too. It's like, I always talk. It's like, don't ask the guy how many inches the deer was. Ask him something else. Like, it's not about that. It goes in stages, like, in my opinion. I shot a couple 100-inch deer, and then I wanted to go a little higher than that. So I did that, and I wanted to go a little higher than that. And that's kind of where I'm at now. But I shot a 2-year-old deer, and now I shot a 3.5-year-old deer. And that's what I want to target right now, because we don't have a lot of 3.5-year-old deer. So it's easy to get wrapped up into that, because that's what our social world and our hunting industry is. It's promoting. And I'm not saying TV shows are all good, because I think a lot of our TV shows are promoting bad things, as far as like, you're not accepted unless you shoot a 150-inch deer. Well, no, that's not right. You know what I mean? Like, I don't like that part of it, and I feel like some TV shows are portraying that as well, and I don't want to get wrapped up into that either. So, and how you're saying about the Michigan deer, or the Upper Peninsula, I actually have a family deer camp up in Delta County, up right on US 2, right by Nema and Rapid River, right in that area. And
Oh yeah, I've hunted up there.
yeah, and we only have like an acre of private land, but everything's public around it. And my buddies and I, we've been talking for years. We're like, we need to go up there. We have a cabin to stay at, and like just go hunt public land. And we just haven't done it, and it's right there at our fingertips, and we get cheap tags, because we get, I guess you'd call them cheap. We get the resident tags. So it's like, why not go up there for a week and just have deer camp, just have fun, and just haven't done it yet. So that's on the radar too.
Well, anytime you're headed up that way, let me know, because my camp's about an hour from there.
Okay.
And I've hunted state land on Stonington, so like on the Stonington Peninsula. which is, I think, back maybe just a little bit to the east of that.
Yeah.
But I've hunted there quite a bit, so if you're going up there and you want to learn some public land right there, I can point you to some areas.
Definitely, man. And I haven't been up there since I was probably 17, just because I've been so busy and nobody's really gone up there in a while. And it might be something we just need to plan a trip and just go up there in the summer or spring or something and do some scouting and just get a group of guys, whoever wants to go up there, and just have like a guys weekend,
Do our own little Michigan public land competition.
There you go. That'd be fun. So
yeah.
Well, I got one last question for you guys. We're coming up here in a couple hours, which has been awesome, and love the conversation. But I got one more question for both of you. Without basically keep your bow and the obvious things out of it, but if you had one piece of gear that you couldn't live without, what would that piece of gear be and why?
Well, so that I don't know. I would say, and I was asked this on another podcast recently, and I think most importantly for what I'm doing right now would be a compass. And that's just, from the time I was, like I just told you, like our property in the UP, if you go north, it's 3 miles to the next road. So I was given a compass at 10 years old and said, if you ever get lost, head south. And not the greatest thing to tell a 10-year-old, because I probably came home and thought, if I ever get lost, I just need to go south and I'll find what I'm looking for. But from our time out west, from all of the time that I've ever been hunting and in the woods and in unfamiliar territory, that is the one thing. And I don't know if that's the answer that you're looking for, because it's not like that hunting piece of gear that's that golden token,
right?
But that's the piece of gear I don't leave the truck without a compass.
Yep.
Let alone anywhere else. So
Well, I'm kind of on the same thing, but I'm going to take it more digital. My Onyx is, especially after out west.
Yep.
I mean, I'll get up in my tree and then I'll sit there and look at all the surrounding properties and try to scout at a new spot. I mean, or sit at home and lay in bed, the night before, and I'm like, all right, well, this is here. I want to check this out. So my biggest, especially after being out west and really utilizing that tool out there, the Onyx is my, besides my, like you said, bow or my tree stand.
Right. Yep.
But
besides the obvious things,
Yeah.
But the other answer to that question, as far as like with those obvious things, I think the most important one to me, as far as actual bow hunting and related situations, is I hunted for probably the first 20 years without a rangefinder.
Right.
And that cost me a lot of deer.
Yep.
Because it was the Kentucky windage. So I think if you were going to be, setting up beyond your bow and your tree stand, is to have a rangefinder and have it tuned to your equipment.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be a variation between your buddy's rangefinder and yours, and that to me, as far as important gear, would be number one.
Yep.
Yeah. I'd agree with that. Like the other day I was out, I had morning hunt and I got down and I ended up going over to another spot. I was picking out a new tree and ended up clearing some shooting lanes because it was nice and windy, and I was jumping around, and I got halfway back to my truck and I looked down and my rangefinder was, I buckled it onto my bino harness.
Oh.
And I looked down and the clip was there and so I spent an hour and a half backtracking and finally found it. I was pretty sick to my stomach. But
and they don't just give those things away either.
No.
Yeah.
But yeah, rangefinder is definitely up there.
Yep. Well, cool. Well, I want to thank you guys for coming on here and doing this and just getting the time to do it. I know it's getting kind of late. I always do these late at night, and I say that every time, but it's about the only time I got to do them. So But
Yeah, we do the same.
yeah, I enjoy your guys' podcast. I listen to it every week, and you keep doing everything you're doing, man. I love listening to you guys and hearing everything and all the guests you have on, and and like I said, I appreciate you guys coming on and doing this with me as well.
Yeah, no problem. And for you to say that, it's really, because we don't. I mean, you can go on and look and see the downloads, and you don't know who they are, who's listening, or where they're at. I mean, I see that there's some in Russia and there's some here and there, but it seems to be mostly the United States. So I just think it's people around here or like whatever. So all the feedback that we get, and I'm sure you do too, is just great. Just to hear people that are listening and that are following along and are interested. So,
yeah.
Thanks for the kind words.
Yeah, no problem, man. You guys are doing good and doing great. Actually, like I said, I listen to it every Wednesday, and I drop mine every Wednesday too. So it gives me. I got a 45-minute drive to work every day, so it's a good podcast and coffee time for me to kind of get my day ready. So, but
perfect. And then we'll put this one out on our feed as well. So we'll kind of have that transition over to get our listeners kind of spun up on everything that you're doing over there.
Sweet, man. I appreciate that. Both of you. I really appreciate it. So,
all right.
Well, cool.
Good talk, man.
Yeah.
Thanks.
We'll have to do it again sometime. Maybe after the season, all the season winds down and everything, we'll have a regroup and just kind of explain how everything went. And, maybe we'll have maybe I'll have my saddle by that time, and we can talk more about that too.
Well, perfect. And I think, we had kind of talked about it before, we both went on our big trips, and, we're close enough, I think, that we can, get together and,
Maybe even more like a walleye trip or something over.
Yep, head over there and do some fishing.
There you go. Or if you want to, I got a nice deer camp here too. I mean, if you guys ever want to come up, and we could do some, I don't know, do some small game hunting in the winter or something and stay at the cabin. Or if you guys want to come up for the day or something, we can get together and just do a podcast. That'd be sweet. So
Yeah, sounds good.
Sounds great. So
all right, man.
All right.
Well, thanks a lot, guys,
Right.
and I will talk to you soon.
All right. See ya.
Thanks.
All right, there it is, another podcast in the books. I know it was a little long, but it was a good conversation. I thought there was a lot of cool stuff in here that a lot of people could take from it. So thanks again for listening, and thanks for all the support. And please go to iTunes, leave a 5-star rating, and leave some feedback. It's greatly appreciated. And don't forget, next Wednesday, we'll have an all-new podcast. Thanks, guys.